Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Trillion Dollar Ads podcast. This is where we discuss the key trends and challenges that is shaping the advertising industry today. With me is Gman, who's been an agency veteran in Mindshare and is now the founding CEO of Achilles. Achilles is a privacy enhancing technology company, and I'm sure Gman has lots to share about the changing world of privacy as we navigate it today. Right? Welcome, Gman, to the podcast.
Thank you, Jayesh. It's a pleasure speaking to you. I've been in advertising all my life since 1990. Started off as a media planner and then moved into uh, managing certain accounts, leading CPGs. Saw the bifurcation of creative and media, becoming media independence, and then moved on to the region to run Mindshare for Asia Pacific. Then, when media became center stage, moved on to servicing clients in the area of account planning and communications planning. 30 years in the industry, finally felt that I should do something different. So I quit in 2020 to set up this company, Achilles. The primary focus on privacy and regulations because privacy was becoming a big area of focus.
Okay, so explain in a simple way what is privacy enhancing technology.
Yeah, so if you look at it, all of us as consumers happily tick all the boxes when a company asks you to sign up for various terms and conditions. These enterprises are called as fiduciaries who are supposed to manage and take care of your data. And as a consumer, we have authorized them to use our data for various purposes. And privacy enhancing technology essentially means that the company is supposed to take care of your data and protect it and not use it for the purposes beyond what you have given them permissions for. Uh, it's uh, it's largely a self-regulated responsibility, but when it crosses a line for rampant commercialization, regulators come in to enforce certain rules.
And but that is up to everyone to kind of self-regulate, right? I mean, whoever is collecting the data should have consent. They should follow whatever is the privacy laws of the country. Is there any other requirement apart from that?
So as part of the privacy obligation that an enterprise has signed up for, the key element to this is the consumer has the right to ask the company to whom they are given consent to say, hey, what have you done with my data? Whatever they have done with the data, there is an obligation for them to maintain it, and upon questioning, they need to provide it. I think the entire privacy regulations is built on this particular principle. There are other things in it, but ROPA is what matters the most today.
So a few years back, like when GDPR came in, it was the onus was for all ad tech players to follow, right, and including the big tech. But now I think privacy has got mixed up or meshed with the anti-competitiveness concerns or antitrust concerns. So there is an angle of privacy which is a user right, and then there's also this antitrust looming, and then there is this dynamic between Google and Apple on a very different approach to that, right? Because so how should what's your take on whether this is yes, everybody wants to be privacy first, but it seems like whatever Google is doing and this constant deprecation of or not the delay in deprecation of cookies, they trying to still control it through the browser, still rankles a lot of people, but it is still very unclear on where the industry is today.
Yeah, I think there are three different tracks of what you're talking about. The track one is antitrust or controlling the digital supply chain. That is where the Google drama is going on. And the Google versus Apple in securing and managing consent, that is opting in and opting out. There are different mechanisms in which the consent is being taken. The third one is consent itself and cookies itself. So there are three things. If you look at consent as the first track, the cookies today, third-party trackers. Now, I'm not talking about the first-party trackers. Third-party trackers are, in a way, non-consented pixels on the browser, which neither you or me or any of the consumers have ever given consent to, your or mine behavior. And that can be used for targeting purposes. And that was used for building recommendation engines or tracking purposes. It all was fine till such time it became rampant tracking of consumer behavior. And that led to the entire advertising business built on those unconsented trackers, as a third party cookies. That led to made for advertising sites where you can just put any content and can be watched or read by anybody. And there was a overdose of this to the extent that content was not regulated properly. The the advertising took over the content as an extension of this, and needless stalking of a consumer's behavior, and therefore regulators kicked in to say that consumers' data is being abused beyond what is being done. So there has to be a consented tracking of consumers, and the cookie deprecation began with that purpose, which is where Safari took a lead on this with consent in a different form. Chrome and the Chromium browsers needed to also follow a different mechanism of. So it is all about consent. The regulations are saying that a consumer should not be stalked. He or she should give a consent for what they are doing online, and that can be only traded or used or enriched from with his consent. Right. That's the deprecation of the cookies story.
That is step one. We all, I mean, I think as a user, you want consented cookies, and then you don't want people to be, you know, looking at your behavior without telling you. But it seems like it's more complicated than that, right? Because the complication arises because Google owns the browser, it owns the OS. It also is also the largest marketplace for ads as well, and then it also has Gmail and it has other data collection mechanisms. So, is it largely a big Google problem, or is it an ad tech industry problem?
Okay, so it is as much a Google problem as it is an ad tech problem. Okay, let's say, for example, if today a typical ad spend or an AdX breakup, 70 to 80% of the monies are with the various walled gardens and social media platforms. 20% is what the trade desk calls as the open web, right? The challenge of this deprecation of cookies and an alternative is prevalent in the open web as much as with the walled gardens. Unlike social media platforms, they are self-contained with their own application, and they regulate themselves when a brand gives signals to them. They build their own custom audiences. They offer ROPA from their own system. And they are not into other allied businesses like browsing, emailing, and other stuff. So they are, to some extent, taking care of it themselves. Whereas the open web, which was dependent on the free cookies, which was connecting everybody, when the unconsented cookies go away, Trade Desk wants to give an alternative as UID 2.0. There are 4 or 5 other ID solutions trying to connect the open web to give you one open web. So it is a challenge for them because it is fragmented right now. And I'll tell you why the Google's problem is. Google had built the entire ecosystem with their email addresses and the browser behaviors fairly mixed up amongst their ecosystem. They have Ads Hub, they have Chrome browser, they have Gmail addresses, they have YouTube, and they were able to connect the signals amongst themselves because I given consent as Gmail, I given consent to the browser, even through Gmail. So it became a bigger problem. Okay, which is where the Privacy Sandbox comes in. When Google offered the Privacy Sandbox as a solution, where they tried their best to uh, disintermediate their own process by during secure credentials, the provenance of what the data is being done, how do we enrich data sets. But it has still failed repeatedly over the past 3 years' time, only because, as I was telling you some time back, it is the ROPA that they couldn't meet the regulations on. Because when, as a consumer, our data is being used by them and Google across their platforms, and they have to maintain a record of what they have done with the data. It is across 5 or 6 organizations amongst them. That is where it fails today. And the reason why they finally gave up to say that no, I'm not going to deprecate the cookies. I'll switch my priorities towards a better consent or a better user based mechanism is what they should have done a long time back, and maybe the industry wouldn't have wasted 2 to 3 years of the time today.
And do you think that, I mean, the Google Privacy Sandbox was well intended, right? I mean, in terms of, but it had a lot of different issues. Like, for example, it was not very clear for publishers on how it will operate, right? Whether they will get any reports from Google at all. So even though as a design principle, it made a lot of sense, but is it just because we didn't have enough time, or we have 3 years, but we had 3 years, but I mean, to discuss some of these meaty topics, there was not enough time because the deadline was just in 6 months away. So where exactly did it fail, despite having good design principles?
I think the Privacy Sandbox was announced immediately after the regulations kicked in. Okay, and the IIB Tech Lab was directly fully involved in it in 2020 first quarter itself. There needs to be a neutral entity that captures, contains, and carries consent. That was the need of the hour. Yeah, that is the only way any technologies that replaces the cookie can meet the requirements. Independent, neutral entity. That's the North Star. Uh, and the Privacy Sandbox repeatedly failed in meeting that North Star only because they brought the browser into the equation. If they had let go of the browser, you would have solved the problem because the browser is not behaving like a neutral entity. The browser is also the property of Google. Whereas Safari and Firefox and Mozilla or other browsers moved on from that constraint and moved to consent based, like ask app not to track. iOS and IDFA were simple in their own system, whether it is browser or application. They didn't distinguish app ecosystem from the desktop ecosystem, simply gave the responsibility to the consumer to say, the moment you give you consent, I will take care of the rest of the stuff, and I just give you responsibility that I'm going to take care of it. In Google's case, they are too big. There are too many ecosystems that is dependent on each other.
Got it. So it's like cookies are, I mean, third-party cookies or any form of cookies is back, so long as it's consented. It still means that Google is in its strong position. So what happens to all the other alternatives, whether it was publishers' first-party data, the contextual solutions, or even this, the live ramp IDs and all the alternate IDs? So where is it like they all have to choose their own destiny now, or are they already embedded enough that it will be a part of life?
Measurement has gone out of the window. If I have to allocate $100 in a media plan, I really don't know how to allocate the 100 across search, social, mobile, open web. No idea, because each of them have built their own mechanism of attributing their success incomparable to each other. And this deprecation of cookie delay or removing it to find their own user experience is put the last nail in the coffin. That now we are going to have a bunch of concrete jungles, each marking their homework, and then you will never be able to compare and contrast one versus the other. Google will become their own garden. Their consent mechanism, their way of managing their ecosystem, it's a bigger garden, and there will be a Facebook garden, there will be a Snap garden, TikTok garden, and then open web will struggle to find one common consistent consent mechanism between UIDs and ID5s and everybody else. remain fragmented, and people will, as I can see from articles that I'm reading, people will migrate towards only the gardens because it is better controlled, better self-serve platforms to manage it. That is the cynical me talking about it. Let me talk about the optimistic me of the industry, which is where our company, our Achilles reason for existence comes at play. Consent is not something which is the property of ad tech or martech. Consent is a consumer behavior that is regulations are looking at it, and it is not only with ad tech, martech, it is with fintech, it is with commerce tech, retail media tech, on any other internet behavior where the consent is required. And if you look at it from an India market perspective, uh, we already have some kind of a consent mechanism for in finance and fintech. There are account aggregators who take your data from a consented mechanism and offers it to banks for your credit ratings or your credit reports that all banks take it from. I believe this consent mechanism will willy-nilly force all the ad tech to come together to one regulatory requirement, because regulations don't distinguish only one industry. And take a look at data protection bill in India, or PDPB, or in Indonesia, or even in GDPR. The obligations of a fiduciary is across all the industries. So in my view, the consent mechanism will fundamentally change the way business is being done. And if there is an universal mechanism in which consent can be messaged, managed, and tracked, that's the re-architecture which Project Reorg, as IAB Tech Lab called it. That's the hope. Regulations will eventually come in. I mean, if you look at from India, very clearly, a data protection bill has already passed as a law. And we are now waiting for the board to be formed and how the fiduciaries is going to register themselves to the board with consent. It's a natural extension to add advertising consent. That will mean significant changes to the way the current ad tech ecosystem is being built. So that's the
Is it also
opportunity.
fair to, yeah, is it also fair to say that a lot of the third-party cookies had, I mean, errors in it, right? You would have, your own, especially from the ad tech side, you would have one person in 150 plus segments. He's also a dog lover. He's also a coffee lover. Like, so is it a good thing in a way that a lot of the bad data which existed and people were using it will go away?
Very good point, Jay. So far, uh, it has always been metadata based probabilistic resolution of identities based on cookies behaviors that remained 6 months old or 8 months old or 3 months old. Nobody ever had any data of how old the cookie's half-life is. Okay. And that we all know from our own experiments that it was only 50% effective, and we were living with it because that's something is better than nothing, and nobody could cross compare across different platforms. So you hit the nail on the head. That will change because regulations talk about session based consent. So it's not that no, I given a consent and forever that's going to be there. Repeatedly the consumer needs to refresh the consent, and regulations are also talking about the consumers can go to a portal, a central database where he can revoke it whenever he or she wants to. There will be pulls and pushes. Legacy businesses needs to protect their revenues and the margins and the way they are selling data. Uh, we don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to be a very different world. Yeah, Jayesh. I think all that that tech ecosystem that I've learned so far might be of no use, maybe 2 to 3 years down the line.
But it's also a very onerous to keep, like if I have to do session wise cookie or even ID, right? I might open an app, let's say 20 times a month or even a website. Uh, so every time if somebody's going to ask me the same question, it's going to get a bit irritating for the customer. I mean, then opt out is the only way if you have been
Yes,
asked a question 20 times. You can't opt in 20 times.
that's right. That's right. It's a tricky one. I mean, we don't know which way it's going to go. For example, it is a lot better in the world of Web3. I think this is all Web2 mechanisms. And the reason why I'm saying this is if you look at the gaming communities and if you look at the youngsters, the younger generations who happily live with points they have bought when they were playing a game and they redeem the points within another game. the entire gamification mechanism, there they repeatedly give consent and take consent whenever they want to. They offer the data at the choice. The control has shifted to them, and they are comfortable managing that control and the responsibility. Whereas the older generation don't want to do that, and they're even going to the extent to say it's okay if my data is sold. So there is a continuum on control of data as well. Recently, I was looking at the survey done in US by the e-marketeers. The Gen Z, the millennials, the baby boomers have different way to look at consent. Some of them are willing to part the data and in return for content. There are ways in which some of the publications now say, I'll only give you 5 articles free if you want to read it. Sixth article, you have to sign up. And then after 3 months' time, they'll say again, your consent needs to be refreshed if you want to continue reading free articles. So there are many ways in which you can gamify or goodify it and manage it. That's in the creative side of it, in managing a user experience. Yeah, it's a different world. It's going to be a different world.
It seems like always the people who get hit by such regulation is the publishers, right? And they spend so much time producing content. They are under pressure from anybody who can create a TikTok video, but at the same time they have to invest so much and the monetization path is quite weak, right? And so do you see? They all publishers have invested in first-party data, but of course they don't have that much scale as the big tech. In most markets, in some markets they do. So and you also have your, the data collaboration solution. So what's in it for the publisher? It seems to be like a kind of a losing battle for both revenue and keeping up with the tech all the time, right?
We are dealing with few of them today, Jayesh. Digital news publishers are partly still comfortable with where they are today. Some of them have resigned to the fact that it is okay, I'll continue to be dependent on what Chrome is going to do. And whatever consent Chrome is building, I will live with it. And over a period of time, build on it and change whatever is required there. There are very few publishers who wants to go the other route to say, let me build my own first-party data. Let me control my own destiny and detach myself from the distribution mechanism that is the browser. So for them, earlier when the newspapers were issued, they were distributed home offline through a physical mechanism. Digital came and the browsers took over that responsibility or opportunity through which the content was getting distributed. And the distributor is exactly who is now going to be securing consent or managing it. So they have to make a choice whether they should be browser agnostic and take the consent away from the browser to their own content. And that's a long drive. And we are speaking to a few of them here. They don't know which way they should go. Most importantly, because they don't know the pros and cons of the cost implications of this. It's gray right now, to be honest, unless and until the publishing ecosystem has got their own conviction that now I want to control my destiny and I want to build a direct relationship with my reader. That is a long journey.
Do you see more publishers taking the route what Australian publishers did, where they fought against Google and Facebook? As you said, they are distributors, but they are not paying anything back to the publishers in that sense. So do you see that kind of like a cable TV type model emerging, where in a way the distributors have to pay something back to the publishers, because or you feel that Australia was more a corner case?
It is a cornered case because, see, I think it's also a question of size and business models, right? It's a 25 million contained economy. There are no non-Australian content distributor who are there, and they can manage it within themselves. Market like India, you still have 150 million to be reached. They need to be given free content. they're not going to pay for it. And a market like Singapore, 5.5 million consumers, you can contain it. I mean, you've got six publishers or four or five publications. They can decide and change the way content can be distributed.
Yeah, and it seems like you need that connection with the users. I like, for example, what New York Times has done. They acquired the games, and now they have, and their revenue keeps going up because they made those tough decisions. So that seems to be working. Even the way you write that appeal, like I like the way Guardian writes when you somebody has to contribute for high quality journalism, right? Yeah, yeah. Even I think Shekhar Gupta says that on his YouTube channel on print, right? I have to do this because it is your right to get, just like you have the right to privacy. If you want high quality journalism, somebody has to pay for it, right? And unfortunately, nobody wants to pay for it at this stage, right? So that's the big challenge. Thank you so much, Gman, for this wonderful podcast. And I hope the industry really, goes the first-party data way, and we find more ways to collaborate. When we recorded this podcast, we were not aware that Google is not going to deprecate third party cookies. We see that though Google is not going to deprecate third party cookies, there are definitely alternatives out there in terms of identifiers, in terms of session based consent, and in terms of data clean rooms and federated clean rooms, which can really help data collaboration across the ecosystem and create alternatives to the walled gardens. It's exciting to see how brands would adapt and create new models using these technologies and at the same time stay compliant with privacy regulation. Thank you very much for joining into this podcast. Excited to see you on the next one. Thank you.